So, you know, there are those people, right, who just seem to have this knack for finding the edges, the loopholes, getting ahead that way.
Yeah, I know the type you mean. It's like they see the rules completely differently.
Exactly. And it's not just about being smart, is it? It feels like something else.
Well, that's interesting because the material you shared actually talks about this. It calls it a pathology sustained by their parasitic genius, which sounds pretty intense.
Pathology. Wow. Okay. So not just a personality quirk then.
Apparently not.
Yeah.
It suggests there's a real underlying driver for this kind of um, constant system exploitation.
Right. And that's what we want to get into in this deep dive, using your sources. Like, why do they do it? What's behind constantly trying to bend the rules?
And the source material we're looking at points pretty directly, actually, to one core thing: neurosis.
Cirrhosis. Okay. I've heard the term, obviously, but what does the source mean by it specifically in this context? Let's unpack that.
Sure. So, as defined in the text we have, it's described as a range of mental disorders characterized by excessive anxiety, insecurity, and emotional distress.
Okay.
So it's not just, everyday stress. It's presented as this more persistent underlying unease. And the argument is that this is what fuels the need to always find an edge, an advantage.
Huh. So all this maneuvering, this like constant need to exploit the system,
hmm
it isn't just about being strategic, it's tied to actual anxiety, feeling insecure.
That's precisely the argument the source makes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it suggests this behavior comes from a really deep-seated fear of failure and insecurity.
Wow.
These individuals, according to the text, are often dealing with pretty strong feelings of inadequacy, and that leads to this constant need for validation and control.
That really
Yeah.
casts it in a different light, doesn't it? It's not
Yeah.
just being opportunistic. It suggests there's maybe a lack of inner confidence driving it all.
Exactly. That's how the text frames it. This underlying insecurity sort of
Okay.
cultivates a manipulative and cunning mindset, but almost as a way to cope.
A coping mechanism.
Yeah, it becomes their default way of dealing with the world, trying to get some sense of security, even if it's, built on shaky ground.
And the source was clear this isn't just small scale, right? It mentioned a whole spectrum.
Oh, absolutely. The text says the manifestations go from small acts of deceit and manipulation to larger scale fraud and corruption.
Right.
And what's really highlighted is their almost uncanny ability, it seems, to dissect and exploit any laws, orders, or structures. Like they just instinctively know the weak points.
Yeah, it's like their entire focus isn't on, say, building something within the system or being part of it, but just how to pick it apart for personal gain.
That's a really key distinction the source makes. It says for them, existence is not about building or belonging, but about finding ways to game and corrupt the system for their own gain.
Wow. Game and corrupt. Strong words.
Very. The emphasis is definitely on taking, on extraction, rather than any kind of contribution or teamwork.
And it sounds like there's another layer, too, this need to manipulate. It's not just about getting something, but maybe also avoiding something.
Yes, exactly. The source brings up a significant, deep-seated fear of facing consequences.
Ah.
In fact, it puts it quite bluntly, stating these individuals are often too cowardly to face the consequences of their actions.
So constantly trying to outsmart the system isn't just about winning, it's actively running from any potential punishment.
That seems to be the idea. And that avoidance, the source suggests, just reinforces the whole pattern.
Right, because if you keep getting away with it.
Exactly. It strengthens their belief that they can manipulate things, that their tactics work to protect them. It becomes a self-reinforcing loop.
Which naturally brings up the nature versus nurture question. Is this stuff innate or is it learned? What perspective does the source offer on that?
It suggests it's probably a combination of both, which often seems to be the case with complex behaviors.
Makes sense.
So there might be some kind of predisposition towards neurotic behavior, maybe genetic, maybe early temperament. But then these tendencies could also develop as a coping mechanism in response to past traumas or experiences.
Okay, so an interplay. Potential vulnerability maybe combined with life experiences shaping how someone responds.
That's the picture painted, yes.
Yeah.
So it's not as simple as just saying someone's a born rule breaker. Their environment, their history seems pretty crucial.
Right. And does the source look wider than the individual? Does it talk about, like, society's role in all this?
It does, actually. It raises the point about how society itself might, perhaps unintentionally, contribute to fostering this kind of mindset.
Oh, interesting. How so? How does the world around us play into this tendency to exploit things?
Well, the argument presented is that In a world that values success, power, and wealth above all else, it's no wonder that some individuals resort to whatever means necessary to achieve it.
Hmm. So intense pressure.
Yeah, that constant societal pressure to win, to get those markers of
Yeah.
success. The source suggests it can push some people towards these exploitative paths.
It's like the focus is so much on the result that the how gets overlooked.
Yeah.
And maybe if you bend the rules successfully, you're even seen as clever,
Okay.
at least until it blows up.
That's a really key point the text touches on. It mentions the glorification of rule breakers in some parts of culture as a factor that reinforces it.
Right. Yeah.
When success, however it's achieved, gets celebrated without much ethical scrutiny,
Mm-hmm.
it can kind of normalize or even encourage this behavior in others.
Okay, so let's recap a bit. We've got this potential core of neurosis driving fear of failure, fear of consequences. This manifests as manipulation and system exploitation. And this might be amplified by a society maybe a bit too obsessed with success above all else. So what does the source say we can actually do about this pathology of the parasitic genius? Any solutions proposed?
Yes, it outlines several approaches. First, it really emphasizes challenging societal norms,
Yeah.
shifting the cultural focus,
Hmm.
basically. By moving away from just glorifying success and starting to place more value on integrity and ethical behavior, it's about how you achieve things, not just that you achieve them.
That sounds like a pretty major cultural shift, admiring the methods, not just the outcome.
It would be, yes. Second, the source points to the importance of education, teaching honesty, ethics, and the consequences of their actions early on.
Building that moral foundation, preventative almost.
Exactly. Laying the groundwork. Then, thirdly, it talks about the need for accountability,
Name.
meaning holding these individuals accountable with strict consequences for rule breaking and fraud, basically making sure there are real teeth in the system.
So the risk has to feel real. It has to outweigh the perceived benefit of bending the rules.
Precisely. And then finally, circling back to the beginning, the source stresses addressing the root cause by providing access to mental health resources and support.
Ah, right. Directly tackling that underlying neurosis or anxiety we started with.
Yeah. So it's really presented as a multi-pronged strategy, changing cultural values, education, real consequences, and psychological support.
Okay, so it's a complex picture. This deep dive suggests it's a complex and destructive mindset, really caught between those internal anxieties and maybe some external societal pressures. And the idea is that a culture genuinely valuing integrity could be, well, more resistant to it spreading.
That sums up the source's perspective quite well, yes.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the interplay between the individual and the environment they operate in.
So pulling it all together, your sources argue this constant rule bending often isn't just cunning, but stems from deeper fears, insecurities, anxieties about failure and consequences. This leads to manipulation, and society's heavy focus on success might pour fuel on that fire. The way forward, according to the text, involves valuing integrity more, educating for ethics, ensuring real consequences, and offering mental health support.
That's a very solid summary of the core arguments presented in the material.
Which leaves us and our listeners with something to think about. Consider the systems in your own world, your job, your community, whatever it might be. Can you see subtle ways this parasitic genius, as the source calls it, might operate? And maybe more importantly, what small things could you do or could we do to help build a culture that prizes integrity a little more? Definitely food for thought.